Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon here in New Haven. I'm going to give a couple minutes here just for some folks to continue to pop into the room, and then we'll get started. Trying to find the idea or answer the question, is there such a thing as work-life balance, and how we can potentially achieve it. So we'll jump in here on what I think is a great and interesting topic. I think something that a lot of folks grapple with at all different parts of their lives, whether they are trying to figure out how to set certain boundaries, figure out how to manage personal, professional, how to even just extract from professional at different times. And those are all things that we'll talk about here today. If you do have any questions along the way, feel free to use the Q&A box. I will do my best to answer them. But a couple slides today just to kind of give you, set up some ideas around how we can potentially look at work-life balance, some strategies and tips for addressing it, some strategies and just things to think about to have a conversation with your manager about trying to find this work-life balance. And then we'll wrap it up with, even for those of us that might be managers, how to consider having a conversation with your team members about work-life balance. So we'll get into all that along the way. This, of course, as always, will be recorded and available to view afterward. But let's kind of jump into this idea. So my name is Mike Minatoli, and I am a member of the career education and coaching team here at Yale SOM. Hopefully we've had a chance to meet, but if not, I welcome you here for the first time, and we'll jump in. So again, the idea today is to discuss some tangible strategies to define what balance looks like for each of us, right? We all have different priorities that we're juggling from time to time, whether those be personal, professional, outside of all of those, or trying to, again, just find that balance between the two. It's an ongoing process for everyone. We need to be self-aware of who we are, what we're doing, what's surrounding us. And then we need to make adjustments to what we're doing. And at some point, we have to figure out what is a priority for us. We're very rarely going to find that perfect equilibrium of a work-life balance. But we want to strive to create some kind of sustainable balance that allows for both professional success and whatever our idea of personal fulfillment is. And I know that it's a topic that I struggle with often and have to deal with often. And my wife and I were actually laughing this morning because, as you know, sometimes as we walk out the door at 7:30 to go to the office, if one of us is home, we'll actually say, "See you tomorrow." Because between going to work and dealing with kids' activities in the evening, sometimes, I will sometimes leave the house at 7:30 in the morning and come back at 9:30 at night. And then we do it again the next day, rinse and refresh. So everybody struggles with ideas, and I'm going to share some of the things that I do to try and maintain a little bit of balance, create some flexibility where I can. But I think, at the end of the day on this topic, a lot of people, as we said, struggle with establishing boundaries. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Feeling like, having a sense of feeling that we're doing enough without giving 120% to either side. Some of us might be dealing with more inhospitable business models that lie within our organization. Maybe it's high billability, maybe it's all hands on deck at all moments. Some of us might be just dealing with confusion, right? I did all these things in my career. I had a career, I went to business school, I pivoted or I continued on, and I've spent many years and I've gotten to a level that made sense for me or what I was striving for, and I'm making the money that makes sense for me, but I'm missing something in that. At the end of the day, I think, if you are here today, maybe you are kind of looking for a desire to be more present in different aspects. That might be more present in work, that might be more present in professional life, in personal life. One or the other certainly makes. Maybe we're looking for some clarity and direction. Maybe we're just looking for that extra moment to take a breath. Some people might be getting to a point in life where they're looking at, okay, I've done all these things, I've achieved all these professional goals. Now I need what I think is next is a more robust life outside of work. And some people are sometimes just looking for time to kind of care for themselves, right? To examine that opportunity. So those are all the things that we'll talk about today. Again, if you do have questions, feel free to jump in. a little bit more. Again, we're going to look at kind of what is work-life balance, some of the challenges we address, some tips for improving that balance, conversations with our managers, and considerations for managers. And so I wanted to kind of talk about this idea of balance. What is work-life balance? And I think at the end of the day, a working definition is the ability to maintain a healthy and fulfilling equilibrium between one's professional and personal life. And again, it's about striking a balance between work commitments, personal responsibilities, our interests, and our passions. And at the, if you really start to look into it, it is important for both the individual and the organization. And that's why we're taking a viewpoint today of a little bit of how to have the conversation with a manager and then considerations for a manager. I think there's a lot of opportunity, especially in, I would say, this post-COVID world that we live in. Work life has changed. I think some people find it for the better. It gives them more flexibility to do more, but I also think it has led us to being more plugged in, 20 to 24 hours a day, because maybe we're not in the office as much where we would have some conversations in person. That becomes a more reliance on things like email, things like Slack, Teams, whatever we're using. That constant back and forth does get to folks. So as we move through this, keep in your mind that, again, there's no one size fits all definition for what work-life balance is. The idea is to find some equilibrium between the two, but depending on your personal situation, the culture of the organization that you're working in, the relationship that you have with your manager, the type of role that you might be playing in. Everybody knows where I'm at and where I work. I will usually tell my team members there really is no serious emergency that we're ever going to deal with. There are certainly things that are high priority, but there aren't really any emergencies, right? Some of you may work in an environment where there absolutely are emergencies and things that need to be addressed in that moment immediately for varying reasons. Others of you might work in a more relaxed environment where, of course, you want to deal with a situation that's happening. We want to prioritize it, but it may not be an emergency the way that others might see it. And so I found this picture of all these different bikes, and I was thinking about how a bicycle helps us find our equilibrium, our balance, and we need to use that balance to make a bicycle go. And as you look at all these different bicycles, there's many different versions. There's speed bikes, there's leisure bikes, there's balance bikes, there's bikes with training wheels, there's bikes with wheels that are bigger than others, there's bikes with baskets, and there's even one with only one wheel. Each of these bikes would get us where we're going, but each of them requires a unique version of balance to get us where we're going, right? Again, some are faster than others, some can carry more than others, some require more support than others, and others require more effort than others. None of this is, it's not going to be constant and static. Obviously, it's easier when we're moving forward. But what we look at is, what do we need to change if I'm riding a bicycle in our environment, right? There are changes in our environment that might cause us to struggle or need us to work harder. Maybe there's wind, maybe there's hills, maybe there's different terrain. Again, we're still moving forward in what we're doing in life, but we have to address it differently based on potentially the bike that we're riding, what our ultimate destination is. And so as you think about that, again, when we look at the idea of kind of finding this work-life balance, we're going to be constantly adjusting, maintaining. And if you're like me, sometimes when you get off the bike, you're in a little bit more pain than maybe somebody else would be, based on how your ride went. So again, we're working to find this best version of balance for us and our personal situation. Look, in life, there are going to be times at work and in life where there's particularly busy cycles. Maybe our team is understaffed for the moment. Maybe we're in a period of high growth. Maybe we are dealing with crisis. Maybe we are in our busy season. But we need to balance those opportunities out to know that, okay, I'm heading up and I'm almost to the peak. And when I find that opportunity to come down, I'm going to identify different opportunities to take the opportunity to recharge and figure out what's going. And so, I was sharing this with some of the alumni folks that are on the call. I actually had 3 PTO days this week. I was off Monday through Wednesday to just kind of step away after a busy fall. It got to the time where, it's application period for a lot of students that are doing structured recruiting. And this was a little bit of a lull in our office, and it was a good time. It was never really a good time, as I know, to kind of step away and be able to not look at things. And I was very intentional over the last couple of days of monitoring email, monitoring Slack, but not necessarily getting involved in things that were happening. I wanted to, but I did also need to reflect on the fact that I needed to step away for a couple of days to kind of recharge and get ready for this final push of our semester. And so I'm looking at it as almost as there was no step back that happened because nothing was lost. There might be a sideways step that I'm taking today as I realize getting back into the mode of moving is eluding me at the moment. But as we dive in, think about those opportunities and again, in your situation, what works best for you. And we're going to talk about some of these things. Some of the benefits that ultimately come from finding this work-life balance for ourselves, right? Reduce stress and burnout. That's what I was looking at most recently. I should be looking at an improved opportunity for physical and mental health. Hopefully that will be the next step. But those are two benefits that we would think of as we find this balance between life. Maybe you're looking at enhanced productivity, work performance. And maybe the ultimate benefit is just stronger relationships or an idea of what your idea of personal fulfillment is. So give some thought as you are thinking about this idea of what work-life balance is and how you maintain it. What type of bike are you on right now? Do you need to switch bikes to find more support? Do you need to, are you going it alone? Is there an opportunity where you actually are realizing I can carry more right now and on my bike and moving forward, and I want to do that. So we struggle with this in all different ways, and I just want you to kind of have that idea in the back of your head as you think about work-life balance as we move forward. We've mentioned some of the challenges that come up already, setting boundaries and organizational culture. We're trying to avoid different burnout and different opportunities. But if you're here today because you're striving to find that opportunity to find more balance in personal life to work life, some of that is, as this quote talks about, is putting ourselves higher on the list and realizing that we need to focus on ourselves. Whether that's, one of my team members actually just the other day said to me, I need to, could I go to this gym class at noon and then I'll work an extra hour? And so, of course, right? Take the opportunity if it's there. You asked, and my sense was you didn't even need to ask. I'm so glad that you decided that you felt comfortable enough to ask. But the opportunity was there. I want to do this gym class. It'll help me feel better. It'll get me recharged for the second part of the day. All great. But as we think about these things, procrastination, burnout, culture, right? How much time are we spending scrolling on different devices? Are we diverting to personal business? Are we actually prioritizing the tasks that we need to get done each day? Or are we doing the things that are easiest to get done first? How much water cooler talk is happening? How many doors are we standing in during the day and having conversations in, right? It's easy to get lost in this in the year 2023 because of the constant opportunities for connection, right? Sometimes we're having conversations in person. Sometimes you get into a Slack or a Teams or some kind of text conversation and you realize 15, 20 minutes has passed by and then you don't even remember what you were doing. So it's easy to get distracted in finding this balance, which then pushes things down the line. And then there's the idea of expectation, right? What I hope to get done today, what I hoped to get done, where I hope to see things going. And then there's the idea within that idea of expectation of, is this a real expectation? Is it something that I'm setting for myself? Or is it perceived to be there? Right? I've had conversations with folks that have worked with me and for me in the past where they say, well, the idea that, we need to be here in person more often. And no one has actually said that, right? We've never had a conversation about FaceTime, about being here, about just staying in the office till exactly 5 o'clock because we've never had that conversation. Someone has perceived that is the culture. They've never actually asked. So as you think through some of these challenges, are there things that we could very easily do to address what some of them are to make our lives easier and identify these opportunities for a little more balance? Right. So we've identified what work-life balance is. We've talked about some of the challenges that we may find. Let's talk a little bit about tips that we might be able to use to help find this balance. And the first one has to do with scheduling, right? It's so easy to do so much scheduling these days. But establishing a clear boundary for yourself to be attached to work is a good system to have, right? Whether you're in the office, whether you're out of the office, working from home, working virtually, working in a remote opportunity, how can we figure out an opportunity to put some distinct timeline on these are work hours and these are personal hours, right? How can I find a point where I'm connected all the time? I've got my phone with me. I'm checking email outside of work time. Should I be doing that? Could I be doing that? Am I just checking it to make sure that I know what's happening, or am I actually actively addressing each thing as it comes in? So establishing those boundaries, and then from the other side, dedicating the time to think about, there are personal interests I have, there are hobbies that I want to get involved in, there are relationships that I want to watch flourish based on needing to establish those boundaries a little bit more. And I remember I was on a panel with a couple of alums a couple of years ago, and there was an alum who owned their own business and was saying about 2 weeks prior, they had just removed their work email from their phone. They were looking for opportunities to kind of find this balance between something that they owned and needed to be involved with at every moment, but also not wanting to feel the need to be involved with it every moment. And so they were saying, like, they lost sleep over the first couple of nights, having removed their work email from their phone. But as time developed, they looked at it as an opportunity. If I could go, I'm attached to my device anyway, but I didn't feel the need to actually address every single thing in the moment. And that just helped me clear my head. It helped me be more creative, actually, because I wasn't just addressing problems all the time. I was using that time that I would address all these little emails, or forget that that email was there because I read it in the line in the grocery store. And it gave me time to really actually think about the work that I was doing rather than just process the work that I was doing. And so that was one thing that I thought was interesting. I have never done this myself, but I've heard more and more people taking that as an opportunity to kind of remove that work email from their devices, so that if it's going to be in our hands all the time, I know that I need to be in my work boundary to address those emails. Establishing a consistent work schedule, right? Set fixed hours, do your best to stick to them, right? Life's never going to allow us to do that, but sticking to them every day of the week, right? But if we can maintain a regular routine, sometimes we will avoid that temptation to work late, to work on weekends, unless that's what you want to do, right? There were times, specifically during COVID, where I felt it was actually easier for my life. I would work from like 6 to 8 in the morning. I would deal with my kids and get them on the bus from 8 to 9, or drive them to school from 8 to 9. And then I would do what I needed from 9 to 3. And then I had to go pick them up from school. And so do all the things that they were doing. And then I would actually do some appointments at night with students, which was flexible for them. So it ended up being a long day. But in terms of managing everything that needed to be managed in my life, that type of schedule sort of worked out in that time. So kind of thinking about, are there segments of the day where I feel like I could get different things done? Maybe I know I could do this type of work in the morning. I could do this type of work in the midday. Even now, when I get to the office or in the mornings, I try to do as much of the process-oriented work that I can get done before everybody kind of gets into the swing of things, and people are coming in, and issues have a tendency to arise. So I try to do some of that, getting it done, getting things established in the morning. And I didn't know about this before I was doing some research on this topic, but there's a technique that some people use called the Pomodoro technique, or Pomodoro technique. And this probably works for some people. It doesn't work for all, but the general idea of this technique, this kind of psychological mentality, is to sit down, hunker in for 25 minutes, a very focused stretch of getting work done for 25 minutes, and take a 5-minute break, right? Do that 3 times, and then take a little bit of a longer break. So you're doing 25 on, 5 off, 25 on, 5 off, 25 on, and then maybe take a 15-minute break, and then do that again. And the next longer break is a 30-minute break, right? And people felt that opportunity, our attention spans are so little these days that people felt that they got more done in those 25-minute stretches of focused time with a 5-minute break to divert attention, to address things. If you're working from home, throw a laundry in. If you're working in the office, take a quick swing around the building or go talk to someone for a couple minutes. They felt that they actually were more focused in that. So that's just an idea, a technique that you can kind of implement into your world. And then the other thing would be to just make sure you're taking regular breaks and vacations, right? Whether that's, again, an opportunity to just get up and walk outside and walk down the block, or take advantage of vacation time to disconnect completely. I often have a conversation with many people, like we go into jobs, we talk so much about negotiation, we talk about salaries and relocations, and we don't think about those other benefits. Vacation time is a benefit. You might as well take advantage of it. Holiday weeks, things like that, where people will be disconnecting. Like I have a week coming up between the Christmas holiday and the New Year's where everybody, Yale SOM closes down. And it's the 1 week a year where I might take vacation and I know that nothing else is happening, right? So I can truly disconnect at that time. Whereas other vacations throughout the summer, things like this week, you're kind of monitoring because the world is still happening around you. But that's the week that I look forward to the most because I know that everybody is on break, and things are a little slower. So finding the opportunities to take regular breaks, whether that's during the day. I have a neighbor that goes for a walk every day at 11 and 3. It's a quick 10-minute walk around our neighborhood, but that's what he feels he needs to kind of just refocus what he's doing. So scheduling is one thing. Delegating, right? It's a task that a lot of people struggle with. I struggle with for sure, but identifying opportunities to delegate things to others, right? Free up time for more critical work, free up time for personal activities. And this can only come if we find the opportunity to build trust, to communicate with our manager, if we are communicating up, to communicate with those who are working with us and making sure that they're communicating with us, so that we can all set these expectations that happen, so we can share our vision of what we see, how the workday is going, what's important, how do we prioritize, and sometimes that provides that opportunity to delegate more out. So thinking about delegating, and again, I think it does come from that idea of trust and conversation. Sometimes we think someone is working on something far more stringently than they are, and then it turns out no, they completed that, or they were only using a portion of the day. But in our heads, we're like, oh well, I've already got them working on that project, and there's going to be no time to free that up. They may say, actually, I would enjoy the opportunity to work on something else. So think about that delegating opportunity, that outsourcing opportunity. And then another piece that's very difficult for a lot of us is the opportunity to say no, right? We definitely tend to, and I would say Yale SOM and students that go to schools like this, which turns into alums who are like yourselves, we tend to overload ourselves with commitments because we want to do a lot of different things. We want to be successful in life. We want to be successful professionally, both within our box of our job or our role, but also potentially within our communities. And so we sometimes take too many things on. So looking at life and just kind of saying, okay, there's a point where I have to say no. It's harder to do at work sometimes, easier to do outside of life. And just thinking about, like, are there committees that I would love to get involved in, and what does that look like, right? If I take on this committee, is that committee going to end up being more work than my actual job? Do I have the free time to take on that committee, that community organization? Maybe it's coaching a team in your town for your children, for friends. How do those two things kind of balance out, or how do those couple things balance out in life? And what are you sacrificing on either end if you're saying no? Right? We need to be strategic about what we're saying no to in some cases. Maybe it's no, not right now. Maybe it's no ever. Maybe it's no, I'll look at this in a year. And funny enough, I was just having a conversation with a friend who owns their own business last week, and I didn't realize, they were kind of saying, I step away from the business very often. I'm not there all day long, which was actually my assumption of what they were doing. And they had said that years ago they had laid out a 2-year plan to get a key subset of their employees to a point where the 4 of those people could run everything without this person being there. And the viewpoint that this person was taking, my friend was taking, was to say, I want to be able to spend time with my kids later on. I could certainly be here and it would cost me less money in my business if I was the one doing the work all the time, but my kids would resent me if I got to a point where I was just at work all the time and missing out on their activities and things. So the opportunity to kind of vision that out, and even in this person's case, to see that it was going to be a 2 year kind of plan in place to get them to a place where they needed to be. So thinking about those opportunities to say no, to delegate, prioritizing, right? Always going to be important. What are the most important things that I need to get done today? How can do I need to complete one thing at a time? Can I work on multiple things at one time? Avoiding distractions, putting our phones away. How do we even use our calendar, right? I'm one of those people, if you look at my calendar, it doesn't look like I have anything other than appointments on there because I'm not that type of person. I have people that I work with who literally block out minute by minute what they're going to work on every 15-minute segment, every half-hour segment. What works best for you, right? For me, it's kind of like, oh, things are going to come up, and so I don't want to. I feel like my own idea would be if I blocked all these things out and didn't do them, at the end of the day, I would look at that day as at the potential of a failure. Whereas I leave it open and address multiple things that I don't know are coming, I feel good about it. And so that mental side of things works for me. There are, again, other people that I work with really closely who they really do want to segment out the day and say, I'm going to work on this for an hour. I'm going to work on this for an hour. I'm going to take a half-hour break. I'm going to work on this. And not even, it's not always work tasks. It's just little things that they want to plan into their day to make sure they know what's coming on their calendar at each moment. So think about that. How do you use your calendar? What's the best strategy that works best for you? Today's day and age, that we've always had people that worked remotely and virtually, but certainly these days it's come up a lot more. So do you have a dedicated workspace for yourself? And potentially you're someone on this call that's in New York City and you're laughing at the moment, but where are you working? How are you working? Is it stuff that you can put away and again, separate that that idea, right? Are you working in an office where you can close your door? And is that acceptable within your work environment? At home, do you have a dedicated specific space that you can organize for work and that's conducive to productivity? And again, not everybody has this opportunity, but if you do, can you set up a world where you're working at home or in a space that you can separate those two things? Like, again, same neighbor that takes walks was telling me he works upstairs. Kids have moved out, and he's a more senior point in his life, but was saying he converted a bedroom into an office, and what he enjoys most is at the end of his day, he walks out of that room and closes the door. And so physically, that idea of I am now leaving work is what kind of helps mentally get that person through the day to say, I'm separating now. It is whatever time. I'm walking out of this room, I'm closing the door, and I will open it again when I'm ready to work tomorrow. Laptop's in there, phone is in there, all those things. Doesn't work for everybody, not going to be something that does work for everybody, but just one strategy that this particular person. So is there an opportunity to have a dedicated workspace? Like, we don't use our dining room, I'm sitting in my dining room, and here I am. So what works for you? Can you identify those opportunities? Right? How do we think about our physical and mental health, right? Prioritizing that as something that is important to us. Can we look at that calendar that we were using earlier and make sure that we are engaging in some kind of regular exercise, that we're just changing what we're looking at? We go outside and just look into the distance. Are we maintaining a healthy diet? Does anyone actually get enough sleep in their lives? So all of those activities, though, are things that can boost our energy levels, improve our overall well-being. And I try to fit exercise in where I can. I try to do things, but for a little while, I was joining a group of people that were playing soccer in my town at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then being out by 8:15 to go to work. And I actually found myself far more energized for the day just doing that little activity in the morning, and then finding opportunities to throw it in. But so prioritizing that opportunity as a piece of, if you're trying to find that balance, that's something that you need to work in. Again, even if it's just to get out, like sometimes if you've been to Evans Hall, I like to just walk up to the 4th floor, do a lap or two, and come back down. It's 15 minutes, but I see a couple people. I look out, get my eyes readjusted. I get a little bit of walk. I can't breathe after the 4 floors, but that just shows me that this is something that I need to be doing and is important. And then outside, again, in that physical and mental health kind of umbrella, nurturing personal interests, right? Like we all have things that work kind of gets in the way and we think we can't do these things, but do we have an opportunity to dedicate time for hobbies, for passions, for social activities that bring us fulfillment? Maybe it's travel, maybe it is sport and athletic, maybe it's just reading for fun, not for work, taking walks, go to the gym, whatever the case is. Like carving out that time for those little activities. I know, like, I'm someone that would look at that in the mid workday, and I'd say, oh, if I go to the gym, I got to shower, and now, this half-hour thing that should be easy now extends into a 45-minute thing, and then I'm going to need to probably eat on the other end. And in my mindset, I kind of get into this idea that that's not something I can do, but we have to look at it and we have to address what's important to us. And so as we think about this physical and mental health, right, that can only lead to, if I'm in a better place, if I have more energy, if I'm more excited, then that probably means more work will get done. Maybe more ideas will come out, maybe more creativity, especially if I'm not looking specifically at the work that I need to be doing. And then the last thing we'll talk about in terms of tips today is just finding support and seeking out support, right? Whether that support comes from colleagues, from friends, from family members, from professional services. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're struggling to manage your workload or your life load, right? Talk about it. Find opportunities to just gain strategies. This is I am by no means a licensed person to provide specific advice on this, but there are many people out there who are. And it might be worth your time to see a time management specialist, to see a prioritization specialist who can have a conversation with you and kind of point out some of the areas of your life where you might be focused in the wrong way, or maybe you're focused in the right way, but there's other opportunities to kind of carve out pieces of time that make sense for you. And then communication under the support umbrella, right? Communicating with people, keeping people informed of, if we're speaking specifically about your manager, right? As I said earlier, keeping your manager informed of workload and priorities. They might have a different opinion of what's important than what you thought was important. At times, they might not even know specifically what you're working on. And this goes back to the delegation. If we're keeping that communication open, it provides potentially that opportunity to go back to reassign work. Maybe it's work that's coming your way and opening up opportunity for someone on your team. Maybe it's work that they're recognizing you could delegate to freshen up and focus on strategy or other high-level opportunities. So think about opportunities to discuss and concerns and challenges that you're having. And we're going to talk in a couple of minutes about how to communicate with your manager, which is, again, another important part of this. So as you scroll through, I mentioned a minute ago, maybe mindset matters. And as we think about all of this, do consider the mindset that you're in, right? Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Effective People kind of looks at it this way. I have 5 things on my calendar. What is most important is maybe how a lot of us think when we are looking at the prioritization of work or what we're going to do in a day. And in this idea, Covey says, to think of it more, what are my priorities and when am I going to do those things today, as opposed to thinking and being very specific in what you did. Actually, it's, as you think about it, it's counter to what I said earlier about how I manage my calendar. Which side of this works for you? What is your mindset and how do you approach it, right? Schedule everything that matters to you. Maybe you take 15 minutes at the end of your day the night before to kind of look at the next day and say, all right, here's everything I need to get done tomorrow. Now let me prioritize how I'm going to get those things done, when I'm going to do those things during the moments, right? If you're job searching, to pull it into the job search, right? If you're here today because you wanted some career development strategies on this, right? We're looking for a job can be a full-time job, right? We're working a full-time job. We've got life. And now I'm also trying to find a pivot point. That could feel like a full-time job when you're built in. So can I now carve out hours that I'm committed to my search? I tell students this all the time. Put a block of an hour and a half on your calendar twice a week. Maybe one of those blocks uses an hour and a half to do some research on organizations I'm interested in, to look through LinkedIn, see what's happening out there, maybe to look at some job boards. The other hour and a half that I spend that week will be outreach to interesting people that I found on LinkedIn, to apply to interesting roles that I came across, right? But I'm prioritizing one slice of this is going to be looking and diving in and researching and doing my due diligence. The other side is going to be scheduling, planning, and prioritizing what's important. And so that could be something that you could take a look at in terms of your job. But scheduling that out instead of, again, taking it all as it comes, trying to do things all the time, it'll help you to feel more present to do that. It'll help you potentially feel like you're getting something done as opposed to doing everything at once. It's probably more sustainable. It might be more satisfying, and it's probably more effective as well to really focus in and having that structure built in, as opposed to kind of looking at it going, oh, I have 15 minutes while I'm eating lunch. Let me go on this job board and I'll try to throw an application out. Because then we're just doing things at that point. We're doing things to make ourselves feel better. We should find the balance to do productive things, to prioritize the things that we're doing. And sometimes that opportunity helps. The other side in the job search that I would think about, as you're thinking about priorities, if you're thinking about organizational culture, right? Like this is where the information we can capture in a quick coffee chat, in an informational interview, if these are concerns in a work environment, right? The coffee chatting or the informational interview could be a great way to help identify what's the culture. Maybe because I've done a little bit of that work, maybe because I've had an interview and somebody told me this is what the organization is like, and then you find out a different piece of information. And so I always think back to an interview that one of my family members had a couple of years ago, where they had a great interview. They loved the organization. They were talking about how great it was. And the person was saying there's plenty of work-life balance, and we don't believe in FaceTime, and we don't, this was in the sports industry. So it was like, we don't go to games. You can go home, all these different things. And then this person had a coffee chat with 2 or 3 other people in interviews, after interviews, as they were kind of sussing out whether this was an offer. And basically everything that the hiring manager had mentioned turned out to be untrue, right? Like it was actually a culture of FaceTime. They were going to every game. They were constantly working. They were in the office from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. But this person, the hiring manager in their mind was in a place that was comfortable for them. Right? Like, this is what I want to do. I'm wholly diving into this. The work-life balance that I feel, I'm getting both professional and personal in my life at this job because of the what this job is and the interaction that they would have with different people through the day. So they were fully fulfilled and not seeing that in a way that others wouldn't, who were looking for more of a 9-to-5 opportunity, who were looking for more of an opportunity to do a job and then step away. So the opportunity here meaning to have some conversations, to take advantage of in your career search, to ask questions about culture. A lot of times we think about information as we think about connecting with people about jobs, just for referral. We need to get out of that mindset. All right, so now that we've talked about some of these strategies, let's dive into maybe some conversations that we would have. So if I am thinking about work-life balance, I've examined some of the things that we've talked about today. I have recognized I have these challenges. I've thought about some tips for putting them in place. I need to now converse with my manager on this. A couple things to think about. We want to prepare for this conversation. I laugh about a situation I had 20 years ago where I was unhappy with where I was working, and I would stew all day. And one day something happened where I just snapped, and I walked into my manager's office and I just said, you know what? Here's all the gripes that I have, and I'm going to start looking for another job. And then I walked out and I was like, I just told my boss I'm leaving and I have no other job, and I started a job search. So preparing is certainly helpful in this mode. Take a look at what is happening in your workload. Take a look at what's happening in your manager's workload. Don't do this in the middle of a busy period, a stressful time. There are a lot of times where I think I've gotten to a point with a lot of my managers over my career where I'm able to tell when the right time to ask a question is, or ask a specific question, and how to ask it. Hopefully you're at a place in your work life where you can also have that type of insight into what are the right times. But this would be a great, finding the right time and place, preparing talking points, being specific about whether it's issues with workload, issues with work schedule, how it's impacting professional and personal life, having clear examples that you can articulate your concerns in. Those would be all good things that I would think about in terms of being prepared to go into that conversation. And the best piece of advice I would throw at this would be to be proactive and be solutions oriented. So had many of these conversations in my life where folks come and they just unload, much like I was just telling you I did. But I didn't go into that conversation with any solution to how to make things better. Right. So I think a lot of managers and a lot of folks would say to take that idea of maybe it falls under growth mindset, to come in and be prepared with suggestions on how you can address these things. I think many managers are far more open to that than just the unloading of conversation of these are the things that are bothering me. let's go in with the idea of, all right, here's some things that I am looking at, and here's how I think they could be addressed. Whether that's delegated tasks, a more flexible work environment, time management strategies, whatever the case, all right? As you're having this conversation, focus on the mutual benefits of what's happening, right? If I improve my work-life balance, that's a benefit to this company. How a more balanced and refreshed employee self can lead to, again, increased productivity, maybe more creativity, maybe more engagement. There's always going to be that opportunity, right? We're in it, we're doing it, we're processing and we're moving forward. Sometimes it takes that opportunity to step away from it for things to happen. Actually, something I share with folks who are in a career search all the time. A lot of students, a lot of alums will come in and say, I've been going. I've been in a search for 6 months. I've been doing all these things. And I will typically the first piece of advice that I'll have for someone that's in that mode will be, you know what, just stop doing everything for a week and take a breath and relax. It'll help you see what you're doing. It'll help you prioritize what's important to you. And a lot of times when you take that break and step away, that's strangely when things start to happen. So kind of think about those benefits and stepping away for a moment, or finding a way to have those conversations. Be open to compromise. Obviously, every conversation needs to come with compromise. This is our mindset. We can't go in there thinking we're going to win and walk out and say I was victorious. No, we want to come out in the middle again. We want to find balance, and compromise obviously will typically create that balance. And then, you know, don't forget to express gratitude at the end of this. Be thankful for the opportunities that folks are giving you, that you might be getting. Maybe it's an opportunity to work from home half a day. Maybe it's an opportunity to, you know, you have someone on your team that you feel is getting to an advanced point where they can take on some of the load that you're working on. Whatever that is to help you find that balance, just express that gratitude to the manager so they realize the impact that that's having on you. The worst thing you could do is go into these conversations like I did. Like I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm not being paid enough for this. I'm not happy here. Whatever that case is. I've had situations in my life where people have come and said, we don't make enough. And I've gone back and said, actually, this is mostly in the higher ed environment. I've said, you know what, we actually make more than most people do in this type of role, significantly. And so that idea, you know, that kind of, if I'm approaching that and my manager comes back, where do I go from there? Right? Like, this was my main thing. I don't make enough money, and that has now been shut down. So approaching it more with this opportunity to find gratitude, to find compromise, to find mutual benefits is the best way to go into those conversations with your manager. We're not looking to win, right? We always want to win. This is not one of those moments. We want to focus on, again, finding a good midpoint, and preparing is going to be the key for that. Again, if I flip the script here, if I'm a manager, what are the considerations that I want to think about if this conversation is coming to me? Again, we're going to start with just choosing that right time and place to have the conversation, right? Schedule this conversation for a time when you and your employer are both likely relaxed, focused. We're not worried about work, not during business times, not feeling stressed. You know, I've had this conversation before. I've had people on my team where it just seems like they're struggling with whether it is life, whether it is work, and trying to find that balance, and kind of saying, you know, look, listen, if me extracting for a day your commute of an hour on each side means that maybe an hour and 20 minutes will get done of solid work rather than 2 hours of sitting in the car, let's make it happen for that day, right? Maybe it's not a regular thing that happens, but maybe we can find opportunities where we can cut into that commute to be more productive. And so finding that right time and place is great. You know, if you are a manager, you know, it's a hard thing to do, right? We like to talk. I like to talk. But start with asking open-ended questions. Because this will help you kind of get to a point where you'll understand what are your employees' real what are their real situation here? What are the real challenges that they're facing? What are they really hoping to get out of it? And so maybe it's asking, you know, how are you feeling about work-life balance? Are there any areas where you feel like this could be improved? What are the challenges that you feel like you're facing in here? You know, again, maybe it is commute, maybe it is in-office distractions, maybe it is at-home distractions. Whatever the case is, just be open to asking a lot of questions and trying not to, not providing solutions, not providing advice, not providing, oh, I've done that before as well, right? Really focusing on understanding the person's perspectives, identifying areas where you can offer them support, again, finding out little pockets where things could work. Are they always going to be ideal? No. But again, if the output that's coming back to help that person find that balance is better, than we were there. Be open to the suggestions that are happening and offer your support to them. Again, there's a lot of things that could come from these types of conversations. Once you have a good understanding of what your employee is looking for, what your team member is looking for, maybe it is a small remote work, maybe it's a flex time opportunity, maybe it is a reduced workload for a period of time, maybe it is delegated tasks, clearer boundaries. Maybe of some kind of employee assistance program that exists that, again, because your team member was so engulfed in work and not finding that they didn't even see that those were things that the company offered. So be open to those suggestions. There was a time in my life again where I was able to come to a compromise, I think, with someone based on their suggestion. They only wanted to work a 4-day work week. I couldn't give up a full-time situation or a full-time role on our team. And I said, you know what, let's do this. I said, overload on 2 days during the week. Maybe it's more appointments, maybe it's more projects, maybe it's more programming, and, work from home on Friday. And if I don't see a lot happening from you, I won't judge that, right? It won't be a forever thing, but to get you through the next month of working, if that is a way that you can cut down and you view that as an opportunity to say, okay, on 2 days, I'll overload to get a free day later in the week. If that works, let's make it happen. So there's a lot of different ways to be thinking about how we can make people happier and make them obviously enjoy and be productive on both sides of their life if we're a manager. Again, offering the support, as we said, trying to meet people's individual needs. It may not be the same thing across. People get into the idea of fairness, right? There's always going to be the opportunity for fairness, but different people need different things. And so addressing each employee and their specific needs or their specific desires is probably the best way to go about that. And then I think really the most important thing about all these conversations that we're having, whether we are the person talking to our manager or the manager consideration coming down, is to follow up on this, right? To schedule a regular follow-up, to have a conversation about what's happening. How is this working? Is it something that we think is sustainable? Is it something that we need to back off of now because things are falling through the cracks or it's not working out as well as we hoped? Don't do it just because you do it. Again, if you found this compromise, now let's evaluate whether that compromise works. So find opportunities to follow up regularly and check in with different employees on their questions. All right, so as I wrap up here, I would say these are the considerations we want to make. There's all these points, right? We have work, we have family, we have friends, we have self. What's the balance that we specifically are striving to find? What are we looking for? Are we looking for reduced stress and burnout? Are we looking for improved physical and mental health? Are we looking for more productivity and work performance? Are we looking for stronger relationships and personal fulfillment? Starting with that, right? What am I actually looking for in creating some kind of balance that is most important? We probably can't hit all of those things, or we may not be able to hit all of those things right away. So what is my number one goal? Am I starting this because I'm recognizing I'm burned out and I need the time? Am I recognizing that I want to be more physically active? I actually think I have a more expanded opportunity to improve and do more at work, or I need to do less at work. I want to build relationships, right? All of these things can figure into this. So I think as you're thinking about your mindset, again, like what is most important to you? What's step one in kind of thinking about why I need this balance and how I can create it? And then we kind of move from there. All right, so any questions on this topic that you have, feel free to throw into the Q&A. Happy to kind of give you my thoughts on how to address situations. If you are thinking about this and you're not the person that's going to kind of throw out a question like this, we do have alumni coaching appointments, and this would certainly be a topic that you could address among others in a conversation with a coach. So certainly dive in and schedule those. We are pretty busy, so if you're thinking about a coaching appointment, it might be good to go in and just book out a couple weeks ahead of time. If there are no questions, our next webinar here in December, on December 14th, same time, Thursday, the 14th at 12 o'clock will be about AI and your job search. So many different techniques that are coming up with the expansion of artificial intelligence and how to maybe appropriately use some of those techniques and systems in your job search will be next month's topic. So happy to stay on here if there are any questions, but if not, I thank you for your attendance today. And I look forward to seeing you again in the future.